Hello everybody, let me welcome you here to this tutorial how to paint Tyranid Hivefleet Tiamet. A little advice to our German audience. Hallo und herzlich willkommen an die deutschsprachigen oder multilingualen Zuschauer. Eure spezielle Overdub-Version findet ihr in der Videobeschreibung im Link unter dem Video. Klickt einfach und dort findet ihr dann die Version mit deutscher Sprachausgabe. Und nun zurück zu der englischen Version. I am very proud that you clicked on this video for our quick and nearly easy tutorial paint scheme of this Hivefleet Tiamet gargoyle. It's focused on the paint scheme that's a part of the Codex, Tyranid's 8th edition, with this slightly greenish chitinous armor and this off-white exoskeleton. And the whole reason of this video is to get you the ability to paint a horde of all these gribblies in a relatively quick time with lasers or glazes and contrast paints mainly. So let us start with how to paint Hivefleet Tiamet. We will start with our primed gargoyle miniature. It's primed in the Citadel Contrast Spray Paint Grey Seer, and the first step is to give all these exoskeleton pieces or everything else that should be white on the finished model a good coat of Citadel Contrast Paint Apothecary White. It's very important that you got all the mold lines cleaned up good, so that this contrast paint doesn't pool on areas that you don't like it to pool. Also, on the flat surfaces you can remove the paint a bit, so you don't get these dirty splotches of paint, and then you're good to go. The whole body, head, arms, the gun and all these finger bones that are spread between the membrane are covered by Apothecary White. For those of you who are curious, in the left upper corner of this video you will see the paint I am using, mostly Citadel paint right now. After the Apothecary White dried for 1 or 2 hours and everything is fine to go, I'll do a medium dry brush with Ulthuan gray all across the miniature to pick up all the highest areas of the exoskeleton and give it an easy, very easy and quick highlight. This step is repeated from above the miniature and from underneath the miniature, that there are highlights in Ulthuan gray everywhere. And after this step I go further to give it a good dry brush of white scar, mainly on top of the wings and the body, around the head and the gun, so that there are some highlights there. And this is a stage where you can call the exoskeleton done, and where you don't have to do much more, cause we just keep in mind Tyranids are a very, very gribbly, swarmy army where you easily got hundreds, 200s of models, and you want to go with a easy and easy to reproduce color scheme. After the exoskeleton is done, we go to all these chitinous parts and to the claws. I use Coelia Greenshade, a Citadel shade paint, to give it a glaze over the before mentioned parts. The talons on the wings would be greenish too. If you like to get these talons in a bone color, just follow the steps that I use later on the teeth. to give it that look. I think it's nice to give it a greenish touch so that it fit better in the overall color scheme. After the first layer of glaze, I give all the chitinous parts a second layer to darken the color down. And before I also glazed the parts in between the limbs, these small connecting areas where there is these soft material, and I use this glazing technique because I think it's easier to glaze these colors instead of painting something like Stegadon Scale Green, because the shade easily flows in the recesses around the glazed areas, and with a layer color you must do it more precise. It's important that you don't mess around and get on the white surfaces, but if you do so, like I had before on their arm, you could wash out your brush very quickly and with some clear water just remove the shade from the area that you don't have to go on. So, and after you got all these Coelia Greenshade done, we go to the next largest surface, the membrane of the wings. Therefore, I go with Seraphim Sepia in a 50-50 mix with Lahmian medium, often called by me Seraphim Sepia soft tone, cause it's given a soft finish if you glaze with this color. This is to get a feeling on how the membrane looks if it's colored, and give it a first touch of color. And after this is done completely, I will glaze with another color, and both glazes together give it a nice kinda thin leathery finish. It's important that you don't let the color pool in the recesses as much on the wings. So as you see here, I take off the excess paint with the brush in the edges and use this paint again to paint further elements of the membrane. After this is dried in about 15 to 20 minutes, there is the next color to be painted on the membrane, and this is the upcoming Reikland Fleshshade. But before, I glazed these little tubes on the gun and teeth and tongue to get it a quick and easy finish for all your people that don't want to do match highlights, only want to put down some color on the miniature. So next step, as mentioned, is Reikland Fleshshade. I put it down on the recesses on the membrane, wash out my brush, and with a wet brush I feather out the color on the middle part of the membrane, right to the edge. So I get a little bit of recess shading on the wings, and the main part of the membrane is colored a little bit in a reddish tone, and together with the sepia it gives the tone that you would expect like from Batwing. Bat with a T, you know. And this is important to let it dry the upper side. Then, if the upper side is dry, flip the miniature around and do the downside, the underside, so that the color don't pool in areas you don't want it because of the gravity. And the miniature is done if you want to do 200-400 miniature horde. If you want to go a little bit further, you can do it like I do it here. With Sybarite Green, I paint some highlights on the chitinous armor. I use Lupri Master Reikland Rotmara Kulinski with a strength of 2 for the whole miniature, for the whole process. And I take this Sybarite Green in small lines from like the middle of the chitinous plate to the to the edge, and be gentle. Just some few small lines would do nicely to give this organic feeling, like the chitin has grown on the parts where it's near the body, where it's fresher. There it's a little bit darker, and on the far side where the chitinous is very old, maybe it's like rough, and the edges are not flat anymore. Next step is nearly the same with Ionrach skin, and I use about 1/3 to the chitinous edge to give it these small lines, and I leave some of the edge pieces free where the model got all these scratches on the chitinous armor. These steps from the chitinous back I reproduce on the head, on these horn-like thing, on the talon, on the back, on the claws, on the wings, and even on the chitinous structure on the gun. But I think it's enough if I show you the steps on the back of the gargoyle. And even if you think Ionrach skin doesn't fit in to this color scheme with the Sybarite Green before, it gives an like alien looking contrast, and for Tyranids it's just fine. To give it a little bit extra, I take Ulthuan Grey and repeat the process on the chitinous plating right above the spine, and some little lines to roughen up the edge, and to blend the chitinous parts a little bit more into the whole picture with this slightly off-white with Ulthuan Grey highlights exoskeleton that this Hivefleet got. After this is done, there are some pieces like the eyes on the gargoyle and on the gun. There I base coat the areas with Jokaero Orange, very, very rough, and I do a highlight in the middle of the areas with Averland Sunset, so that you get a transition from orange to yellow. And after that, I give it a glaze with the before mentioned Seraphim Sepia. This got two effects. Effect 1, blend the yellow and the orange better together, and give it a little bit of recess shading around all the eyes to give it a more evil look. After the eyes are done, I go further to some additional details. Cause I like the tongue to be painted in a violet color, and I base coat the tongue and this little tube above the tongue, that's I think part of the tongue also, with the Barak-Nar Burgundy, and paint some highlights like a little bit of wet blending, so Barak-Nar Burgundy isn't dried right now, with a Screamer Pink on the slightly wet surface to give it a nice touch around the sides of the tongue, the tip, and this little tube thing, a little bit of highlighting. Followed by a little bit of wet blended highlight with Pink Horror to give it a last finish. And if you like to, you can put down a little bit of art coat after you varnished the miniature on the tongue, or you can give it a little bit of white scar, a small dot on the tip of the tongue to give the miniature a little bit of a wet look, a slimy wet look. So this could even be the stage where you say, okay, the miniature is done, I'm fine with it, but we go a little bit further and do some work on the exoskeleton, I take white scar and give a little bit of highlighting on all these raised surfaces where the exoskeleton pieces end, or where the finger's bone are, or around the mouth, where are these sharp lines of the jaw, or this little tubulous thing right and left of the head that Tyranid got, and pick out all the areas to go a little bit further, but nothing special, here and there a little bit. After this step, if you like to, and if you say the claws have to be more of a bony color, you could paint the claws and the teeth now with Steel Legion Drab to give it a base color, darkened base color, and follow this step with Karak Stone. Karak Stone would be more the tip of the teeth to nearly to the gum, but not the whole way. And what I forget here in this tutorial and fix it later is this small spike on the gun's magazine down there. And after you do Karak Stone, you can get a last highlight with Ushabti Bone only on the teeth's tip. But if you got 100, 200 Gribblies, I don't think you have to highlight it this far. Or if you like to, you can do another highlight with a Screaming Skull, even more on this tip part. To highlight the membrane, I use Kislev Flesh and paint in some lines like on the chitinous armor, these small lines from in between the membrane to the edge. And firstly I thought, oh, Kislev Flesh, nice color, but it doesn't fit right in with this membrane color. But the finished result give it a more like color variation, alien look, that there is a not 100% matching color. So I think it was the right choice, and I finished this step with another layer of Flayed One Flesh, just some small lines on the edge of the wings and around the little holes that are here and there. So, we're nearly there. There's just some tiny pieces, additional pieces you can do. Firstly, you can take a color that to get a little pupil in the eye of the guns to give it a more evil look. On this occasion, I use Barak-Nar Burgundy, this like purple color, to give a matching color to the tongue. To don't use maybe 100 colors on a miniature, different colors. And after that, I give it a good coat of matte varnish, satin matte varnish, and then you can decide if you want to give it a little bit of basing techniques, or if you like to give it a clear fly stand. And this color scheme gargoyle is done. I hope you liked it and you could understand my moderation code. I am not a native English speaker. I think you could guess this so far. And on the screen you got some more videos of mine, German videos, live streams, other tutorials, or like vlog kind that come every Wednesday. And I hope you like it. Leave a comment or a like. See you next time. Your Dizzy Finger. Keep on walking.